The post was closed, and the report stopped. Fire Lookout 4 was boarded and left unmanned. The radio was removed. The logbook remained in the district archive. It records entries from a single structure above the Skycomish River drainage, times, bearings, durations. Each entry describes the same detail. A light moving below the ridgeline at night, no sound, no access. The radio shows repeated check attempts with no response. The terrain shows no trails, no tracks, no structures. Yet the movement follows the same routes for decades. When the lookout closed, the entries ended. The file contains no explanation. The Cascade Range runs north to south through Washington and Oregon. It forms a wall of volcanic peaks and steep ridges that divide the region. Fire Lookout 4 sits at an elevation of 6,200 feet, overlooking a drainage basin in the Central Cascades. The structure was built in 1947. It replaced an older wooden platform that had burned. The lookout is accessible only by trail. No roads reach the summit. The nearest ranger station is 14 miles to the west. The trail gains 3,000 feet over 6 miles. It switchbacks through Douglas fir and lodgepole pine. Above 5,000 feet, the forest thins. Snow remains on north-facing slopes into July. The lookout itself is a 12 by 12-foot cabin with windows on all sides. It was staffed seasonally from May through September, depending on fire danger. One ranger occupied the structure at a time. Resupply occurred every 2 weeks by pack mule. Communication was maintained by radio, weather permitting. The drainage below the lookout is steep and heavily forested. The terrain drops into a series of narrow valleys that receive little sunlight. No established trails cross the area. The forest floor is dense with undergrowth and deadfall. Water drains west toward the Skycomish River. The climate at this elevation is cold and wet. Summer temperatures rarely exceed 70 degrees. Fog moves through the valleys in the morning. Thunderstorms build in the afternoon. By mid-September, the first snow typically arrives. Winters are severe. Snowpack averages 12 to 15 feet. The lookout is abandoned from October through April. The area has always been isolated. Logging operations stopped 3 miles below the lookout in the 1950s. The remaining forest has been undisturbed since then. There are no cabins, no old homesteads, no mining claims in the drainage. The Forest Service maps show no structures within an 8-mile radius of the lookout. The following material comes from the operational logs maintained at Fire Lookout 4. These logs were required by the Forest Service. They recorded weather conditions, visibility, and notable observations. Each entry was signed and dated by the ranger on duty. The logs were collected at the end of each season and archived at the district office. Most entries are routine. They document wind speed, cloud cover, and the occasional lightning strike. But certain entries contain observations that were noted without explanation. They were recorded in the same format as weather data. No commentary was added. The logs were not intended for public review. They were internal records. What follows are excerpts from those logs, beginning in the summer of 1971. June 18th, 1971, 1900 hours. Weather clear, winds light from the northwest, visibility excellent. No fire activity observed today. Resupply completed this morning. Radio check conducted at 1400 hours. All equipment functioning. Evening observations show clear skies to the south and east. Temperature dropping as expected. Routine patrol of surrounding ridges completed at 1600 hours. No issues noted. All standard protocols followed. June 22nd, 1971, 2200 hours. Weather clear, no wind, temperature 48 degrees, visibility remains excellent, no moon tonight. Star visibility unusually clear. Observed a light in the valley below the lookout at approximately 2145 hours. Light appeared steady, white in color, estimated distance 1 to 2 miles northeast. No known trails or access points in that area. Light remained stationary for approximately 6 minutes, then moved slowly east along the ridgeline. Movement was consistent, not erratic. Light disappeared behind terrain at 21:51 hours. No sound observed, no smoke, no indication of fire. Radio check attempted, no response from base. Will report during morning check. The 1971 season continued without further incident. The ranger who filed that report completed his assignment in late September and rotated out. His name was listed in the log as D. Henriksen. No follow-up report was filed regarding the light. The Forest Service records contain no notation of the observation beyond what appears in the log. The next relevant entry comes from a different ranger 3 years later. By this time, Fire Lookout 4 had been staffed by at least 6 different individuals. The seasonal assignments rotated regularly. Most rangers served one summer, then transferred to other posts. The logs from 1972 and 1973 contain no references to unusual observations, standard weather data, standard fire activity reports. But in August of 1974, another entry appears. August 14, 1974, 23:15 hours. Weather overcast, light rain earlier in the evening, winds calm, visibility reduced due to low cloud cover. Observed a light below the cloud layer in the drainage to the north at approximately 22:45 hours. Light was white, steady. Did not flicker. Estimated elevation below me by at least 1,000 feet. Light moved west to east at a slow, even pace. No trail exists in that location. Terrain is extremely steep and forested. Movement continued for approximately 8 minutes. Light passed behind a ridge and did not reappear. No sound, no other lights observed. Conditions do not suggest aircraft. Altitude and movement pattern inconsistent with helicopter or fixed wing. No distress signals received on radio. Logging this for record. Will report during morning check-in. The morning check-in was logged the following day. The district office acknowledged the report. No explanation was provided, no search was initiated, no follow-up was requested. The log resumes standard entries after that date. The 1974 ranger completed the season. His name was listed as R. Calloway. He did not return to Fire Lookout 4 the following year. His assignment records show he transferred to a different district in Eastern, Washington. No personal notes or additional reports were attached to his file. Over the next 15 years, the observation repeated. Not every season, not every summer, but regularly enough that it began to appear in multiple logs. Each entry followed the same pattern. A light observed below the tree canopy at night, moving steadily, no sound, no explanation. The lights were always described as white or pale yellow, never red or green. They moved horizontally, not vertically. They followed terrain, staying below the ridgelines. They were never observed during the day. The sightings occurred most frequently in June and August. No correlation was found with moon phase, weather conditions, or fire activity. Each ranger who reported the phenomenon did so in the same clinical tone. They logged the time, the location, the duration. They noted the absence of sound. They noted the absence of known trails or structures. Then they moved on. The logs do not contain speculation. They do not contain fear. They contain only what was seen. In 1983, the Forest Service reviewed the accumulated logs from Fire Lookout 4. The review was part of a routine audit of operational records across the district. A memo was generated noting the recurring observations. The memo did not offer an explanation. It recommended that future rangers be briefed on the pattern. The briefing was minimal. Rangers assigned to Lookout 4 were told that unexplained lights had been reported in the past. They were instructed to log any similar observations and report them during morning check-ins. No special procedures were implemented. No investigation was launched. The lookout continued to operate as it always had. By the late 1980s, Fire Lookout 4 had become one of the least desirable assignments in the district. The isolation was extreme, the conditions were difficult, and the lights continued to appear. The pattern continued into the 1990s. Rangers rotated through Fire Lookout 4 as they always had. Most stayed one season. A few returned for a second year. The logs maintained their clinical tone, but the frequency of sightings increased. Between 1989 and 1995, lights were reported in 11 separate entries across 6 different seasons. The descriptions remained consistent, white or pale yellow, moving steadily, no sound, but the duration of the observations began to extend. In earlier reports, lights were visible for 6 to 8 minutes before disappearing behind terrain. By the early 1990s, some lights were observed for 20 minutes or longer. They moved through the drainage in patterns that suggested deliberate navigation. July 9th, 1992, 02:15 hours. Weather clear, no wind, temperature 51 degrees, observed a light in the valley to the northeast at approximately 245 hours. Light was white, steady. Altitude approximately 1,000 feet below the lookout. Light moved east along the base of the ridge for approximately 12 minutes. It then turned south and continued through the drainage. Movement was slow and consistent. No deviation in speed or brightness. Light remained visible for 23 minutes total. It passed behind the southern ridge and did not reappear. No sound at any point during observation. Radio check attempted. No response from base. Conditions do not match any known aircraft or ground activity. No roads or trails exist in the observed area. Logging for record. The ranger who filed that report was named M. Vasquez. She had served at Fire Lookout 4 for 2 consecutive seasons. Her logs contain 3 separate observations of lights during her time at the post. Each entry follows the same format. Each reports the same absence of sound. Her final entry came in September of 1992, 2 weeks before the lookout was closed for winter. September 4th, 1992, 340 hours. Weather clear, light frost on the ground. Temperature 39 degrees, observed 2 lights in the valley to the north at approximately 0310 hours. Both lights were white, both moved at the same speed, and maintained equal distance from each other. Estimated separation between lights was 50 to 70 yards. Lights moved west to east through the lower drainage. Movement continued for 18 minutes. Both lights disappeared behind the eastern ridge simultaneously. No sound observed, no distress signals, no radio traffic. Terrain in the observed area is heavily forested and steep. No access points exist. This is the 3rd observation this season. Previous reports filed on July the 9th and August 21st. Logging for record. Will report during morning check-in. Monsieur Vasquez did not return for a 3rd season. Her transfer request was filed in October of 1992. She was reassigned to a station in southern Oregon. No explanation was provided in her personnel file. The district office noted her request and approved it without comment. By 1995, Fire Lookout 4 had developed a reputation within the Forest Service. Rangers discussed it quietly. The assignment was known to be difficult, but not for the usual reasons. The isolation was expected. The weather was expected. The lights were something else. New rangers were briefed on the pattern before their assignment began. They were told what had been reported. They were instructed to log any observations and maintain standard reporting protocols. Most rangers accepted the assignment professionally. They understood it was part of the rotation, but few volunteered to return. The logs from the mid-1990s reflect this. Entries became more detailed. Rangers began noting not just what they saw, but what they did not see. No footprints, no vehicle tracks, no campfires, no wreckage. The lights moved through terrain that should not have been accessible on foot, especially at night, and they appeared with regularity that ruled out coincidence. In 1998, the Forest Service conducted a field review of the drainage below Fire Lookout 4. The review was not in response to the light sightings. It was part of a larger survey assessing trail conditions and forest health across the district. A crew of 4 spent 3 days mapping the area to the north and east of the lookout. They confirmed what the maps already showed. No trails, no roads, no structures. The terrain was steep and heavily forested. Visibility at ground level was limited to 30 or 40 feet in most areas. Deadfall made travel difficult. The forest floor was uneven and covered in moss. The crew found no evidence of recent human activity. No trash, no fire rings, no cleared paths. They noted the absence of game trails in certain sections. Elk and deer typically moved through the lower elevations, but their tracks stopped well below the areas where lights had been reported. The survey crew camped 2 nights in the drainage. Both nights were clear, no lights were observed. The crew filed their report and moved on to the next section of forest. The findings were archived with the other survey data. No connection was made to the lookout logs. The most detailed account came in the summer of 2003. The ranger assigned that season was named J. Pruitt. He had worked for the Forest Service for 12 years. He was experienced. He had staffed lookouts in Montana, Idaho, and Northern California. Fire Lookout 4 was not his first isolated post. His logs from early in the season were routine: weather observations, fire danger assessments, standard radio checks. On the night of August 6th, that changed. August 6th, 2003, 0130 hours. Weather clear, no wind, temperature 46 degrees. Observed a light in the drainage to the northeast at approximately 0035 hours. Light was white with a slight yellow tint. Steady, no flicker. Initial observation showed the light stationary near the base of the ridge. After approximately 4 minutes, the light began to move west. Movement was slow, consistent speed, no variation in brightness. Light traveled along the contour of the terrain for 11 minutes. At approximately 0100 hours, the light stopped. It remained stationary for 3 minutes. Then it moved directly upslope toward the lookout. Rate of climb was steady. Light advanced approximately 200 yards upslope over the next 6 minutes. Light stopped again at approximately 0109 hours. It remained stationary for 2 minutes, then reversed direction and moved back downslope. Light disappeared behind terrain at 0127 hours. Total observation time, 42 minutes. No sound at any point. No other lights observed. No indication of fire or distress. Attempted radio check. No response from base. Conditions do not match any known activity. Terrain in the observed area is too steep for vehicle access. Movement pattern inconsistent with handheld light source on foot. Logging for record. Jay Pruitt remained at Fire Lookout 4 for the rest of the season. He filed 2 additional reports of lights before the post, closed in late September. Both reports described similar movement patterns. Both noted the absence of sound. When asked about his observations during his end-of-season debrief, Pruitt provided no additional commentary. He stated that he had logged what he saw. The logs spoke for themselves. He did not return to Fire Lookout 4. One more. There are explanations that have been considered. Poachers operating at night with headlamps or vehicle-mounted lights. But no roads reach the drainage. No vehicle tracks have been found. And poaching activity would require repeated access over decades. The Forest Service has no record of citations or arrests in that area. Military aircraft conducting night operations. But the lights move too slowly. They follow terrain too closely. And military flight records do not correlate with the reported sightings. Atmospheric phenomena, temperature inversions creating light reflections or mirages. But the lights move deliberately. They change direction. They respond to terrain in ways that do not match atmospheric distortion. Bioluminescence, fungi, or decomposing wood producing faint light in the forest. But the lights are described as bright enough to be visible from thousands of feet away, and they move horizontally through the forest over long distances. None of these explanations account for the consistency of the reports. Different rangers, different years, different weather conditions, the same observation repeated again and again. In 2009, Fire Lookout 4 was scheduled for decommissioning. Advances in satellite detection and aerial surveillance had reduced the need for staffed lookouts. Many posts across the Cascades were being closed or converted to volunteer-only operations. The decision was made based on budget constraints and operational efficiency. It had nothing to do with the lights. The final ranger assigned to Fire Lookout 4 served the summer of 2009. His name was listed in the personnel records as T. Oakes. His logs from that season were standard: weather data, fire activity reports. No lights were observed that summer. The lookout was officially closed on September 15, 2009. The structure remains standing, the windows are boarded, the radio equipment has been removed. The Forest Service maintains the trail to the summit for emergency access, but no seasonal staff are assigned. One detail resists explanation. The lights were reported by more than 20 different rangers over a span of 38 years. Each ranger was trained to observe and document conditions accurately. Each had experience in remote wilderness settings. None reported evidence of human presence in the drainage. No trails, no camps, no wreckage. The terrain remains inaccessible. The forest has not been logged or developed. And yet, the lights appeared with regularity that suggests intent. They moved through the same areas. They followed similar patterns. They avoided the lookout but remained visible from it. If the lights were human in origin, the question is not just how they accessed the terrain. It is why. For nearly 4 decades, someone or something moved through that drainage at night. They left no trace, they made no sound, they did not respond to observation. And then, after the lookout closed, the reports stopped. Fire Lookout 4 still stands on its ridge in the central Cascades. The trail is overgrown but passable. Hikers reach the summit occasionally during summer months. The structure is locked, the windows are dark. Below the lookout, the drainage remains as it has always been. Steep, forested, isolated. No lights have been reported since 2009. Perhaps they required an observer. Perhaps they were never meant to be explained. The archive does not provide answers. It provides only what was recorded. The rest is left to the forest. The Fire Lookout 4 file is closed, but the archive remains open. Subscribe to access the next entry.